barbed wire helped revolutionize the West by dividing up the land evenly and cheaply. However, some people out west found it to be an impediment to moving across wide plains. Cowboys and Native Americans even came up with a new name for it: devil's rope. Joseph Glidden was a very influential man in the creation of barbed wire, and he forever changed the West and the world. Barbed wire helped reform the West, but it had to start somewhere. In 1873, Joseph Glidden saw a wire attachment at the DeKalb County Fair in northern Illinois presented by Henry M. Rose. He used a wood rail and hammered nails into it to hook onto a fence. Joseph Glidden was there with Jacob Haish and Isaac Elwood. They each saw this and began to talk to Rose about it. Glidden went home and began to invent to improve what he saw at the fair that day. When he began to hear his wife Lucinda complain that this one cow named Brindle kept getting through the fence, he remembered of the wire attachment he saw at the DeKalb County Fair. Glidden's imagination grew, and he soon had an idea that would forever change the world. Shortly after complaining of the animals getting into the yard, Lucinda had something else to complain about. Little by little, every night, her hairpins began disappearing. She blamed her daughter, but Elva was not the thief. Lucinda figured it out when she saw Joseph with the hairpins in his pocket. Joseph took those hairpins to his workshop, and he used a coffee grinder to twist them into barbs. The question that remains to be answered was how to secure the barbs. Joseph wanted a simple and cheap way to make the barbs stay in place. The solution was to twist two long lengths of wire together. This made it so the barbs would not twist and bend as the animals crashed into the fence. Joseph partnered with Elwood to help with the business aspect of the company. Then the next step was to make barbed wire become popular, and that had to start with partnering with a manufacturer. That manufacturer was Washburn and Mohn. Washburn and Mohn were out visiting DeKalb, Illinois, because DeKalb was buying more wire than the whole city of Chicago. When they saw what Glidden was doing, they wanted to partner up with Glidden and help mass produce his barbed wire. Glidden was unsure about this, and he consulted his lawyer about it. The lawyer said to try to partner with Washburn and Mohn, but to keep the royalties so he could continue to make money. Glidden signed the contract and they went into business together.
Why was Jacob Haish's wire very popular as well as Glidden's?
They both sort of answered the question at the same time, and people either liked one or liked the other, but generally not both the same. So he had just the difference is just the twist of the barbed wire, and the twist of the barb itself is the different thing. So some people preferred one over the other, but generally Joseph's is the most popular.
Isaac Elwood created a wire that had mangled metal pieces sticking out of it. Elwood and his wife were riding by Glidden's farm, and Elwood's wife said that Glidden had a better barbed wire design than he did. Jacob Haish built a barbed wire and was very popular as well as Glidden's. It was referred to as the S-barb. The barb was twisted around two wrapped wires to hold it in place. Major conflicts arose between Elwood, Haish, and Glidden. They each created a barbed wire, and they wanted theirs to be the best. Elwood partnered up with Glidden so that he could monopolize the barbed wire industry. Part of the reason he partnered with Glidden was because of his wife's opinion. Haish was a fierce contender, and he went to court to see who got the patent, but Glidden eventually won. A factory was set up in DeKalb, Illinois to manufacture the barbed wire. Barbed wire was consistently made, and it was easier and cheaper to manufacture it nearby and export it. There, Glidden could easily monitor his productions.
Why was Glidden's wire so easy to transport?
Glidden figured out a way to transport it by putting it onto a reel. So they actually were able to transport it in rolls or sort of bales, and they could actually load them onto a railroad car and ship them out to other towns.
Joseph Glidden had patents already, so when he saw the barbed wire, Glidden thought that he could make that. So he did. He was a very creative man, and he was intelligent too. Before he invented barbed wire, he invented something called the land roller. It had wheels placed in special alignment so that the wheels did not go over the same land twice. Barbed wire was needed out west, and Glidden's barbed wire was easy to transport, so it went west. The wire migrated west because Texas Longhorn cattle would trample and graze on farmers' crops, and the farmers loathed it. Cattle would also get run over by trains because they would cross in front of a train on the newly built Transcontinental Railroad. Barbed wire was put up to line the railways for miles at a time. Some people like cattle drivers and Native Americans despised barbed wire so much they came up with the new name Devil's Rope. The cattle drivers needed this space to corral and push the Texas Longhorns across the plains. Native Americans hunted buffalo, and they needed wide open plains on which to travel. Barbed wire was a major obstacle as they were trying to cross the plains, so they couldn't go through. No Google Maps were around to look up the alternate route around the barbed wire. That is when the barbed wire wars were started. Barbed wire wars divided the West. Major conflicts arose between the farmers and Native Americans. It was the people who loved barbed wire and thought it was incredibly useful versus the people who thought barbed wire was an appalling way to give the land division. The people who rejected barbed wire would go out during the middle of the night in masks and cloaks to hide their identity and cut barbed wire fences, as well as vandalize, trespass, and set ablaze farmers' fences and land. People out west formed groups where they would go out together and terrorize. Some of the groups' names were Owls, Javelinas, and the Blue Devils. It was estimated that the damages in the wars alone were around $20 million. It even got to the point where 3 to 7 homicides were committed in times when the two sides confronted each other. Yes, barbed wire has had a rough history, but it really just depends on the perspective. Was barbed wire useful or not? The barbed wire span starting when Glidden invented his barbed wire to when he sold the company lasted under 10 years. Joseph Farewell Glidden sold half of his patent to Isaac Elwood in July of 1874 for $265. In today's money, $265 is worth $5,450.80. Glidden then sold the second half of his patent to Washburn and Mohn in 1876. Glidden received money and royalties from Washburn and Mohn.
What was the year that Joseph sold his wire company to Isaac Elwood, and why did he?
Joseph and Isaac were talking about the difference between Joseph and Isaac's ideas, and Isaac was convinced by his wife that Joseph's was better, and so Isaac offered Joseph to buy half of his patent for half of what Joseph had already invested in it, and so he bought half of Joseph's patent in 1874 for $265.
And why did Joseph Glidden's barbed wire influence the whole world, and how did it do that?
There are a lot of historical arguments about that there was a need for fencing already, but I really think that the thing that most influences the popularity of it is that it's a good way to sort of shape the land. And so Joseph's popularity, I think, goes to that it's a way to shape the world, right? That the world that we see around us is shaped by these forms that the barbed wire can set off.
Joseph Glidden became a very successful man, and at some time in his life, his occupations were banker, businessman, city developer, county supervisor, entrepreneur, farmer, hotel keeper, inventor, mayor, philanthropist, newspaper publisher, rancher, sheriff, and teacher. On top of doing all of these occupations, Glidden used his money for good. He earned so much from all that he did, he was able to donate so much back to the community. NIU, otherwise known as Northern Illinois University, would not be in DeKalb, Illinois if not for Joseph Glidden, Jacob Haish, and Isaac Elwood. Despite all of their conflicts, they came together and compromised to make DeKalb a better place. Glidden donated 600 acres for the school property. Residents of DeKalb County called him Uncle Joe because he knew everyone, and the people would strike up a conversation with him as if he weren't this incredibly prosperous man. Today, barbed wire has been used in wars across the world: barricades, barracks, concentration camps, and home decorations. Joseph Farewell Glidden cut through the country with his patented barbed wire. He will forever be remembered in DeKalb County, Illinois as Uncle Joe, the man who reshaped the West.